Star Wars experts that I would love for them to go down the line and introduce themselves, maybe what they're working on, and I don't know, your favorite scene from The Force Awakens.
Hi, I'm Claudia Gray, and my new Star Wars book, Bloodline, is going to be coming out in May. I did not bring something to show you the cover, but there it is, and we also have a really great banner here, which is great. I think my favorite moment from The Force Awakens is James Bond cameo. And I'll drop my weapon. I loved that even before I knew it was him, and now I really love it.
I'm John Jackson Miller. I'm author of Star Wars A New Dawn there, also Kenobi, Lost Tribe of the Sith, Knights of the Old Republic, and what's the other one? Knight Errant. Yeah. The most recent thing I have out from Del Rey is going to be in the Rise of the Empire collection, where we've got short stories. I did an additional one for that one that has Tarkin in it, and also Tarkin and New Dawn and several other things that we packaged everything that came out in 2014 together. Talking about what I've got coming out, okay. I've been commuting to another universe. There's this 50th anniversary in this other universe right now. There is no conflict, as Darth Vader would say. Or as Spock would say, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. I have a trilogy of novels coming out from Pocket Books, September, October, and November. It's called Star Trek Prey, and it is basically a 100-year spanning story of the Federation and the Klingons, and we'll get into more of that at a Star Trek panel at a later date. But yes, and I'm still certainly, I have my key card to get into the galaxy far, far away. But it's fun to be here. Glad to see everybody in Chicago.
Hi, I'm Adam Bray. I'm primarily known for Star Wars books with DK. Most recently, I worked on Star Wars Absolutely Everything with Michael Kagi, Cole Horton, and Kiri Dougherty. And then Ultimate Star Wars Comprehensive Encyclopedia. And this was also with Tricia Barr and Ryder Wyndham and I'm drawing a blank. Daniel Wallace. Let's see, coming up in June, I have Star Wars Lego Chronicles of the Force, which is kind of a fun look at all of the Star Wars galaxy from the Lego point of view with an exclusive new figure. I've got some Star Wars stuff further afield with some other publishers and some Marvel things coming out in the coming years. So DK particularly is keeping me pretty busy.
Wait, John, you didn't say your favorite scene from The Force Awakens.
Oh, that would be episode 7, seeing the logo there, because we didn't think we would ever see it. And hearing that, the music come up and actually seeing that logo there, it was like, wow, and this is what we were just kicking around saying, could this ever happen? And then the rest of the movie, yeah, sure. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, I don't know that anybody's seen it.
And my favorite is probably when Rey grabs a lightsaber, just the look on Rey's face, because Daisy Ridley is such an amazing actress. She doesn't even need to speak. I mean, just looking at the expressions on her face is just incredible.
I'm Jeffrey Brown. I wrote the Jedi Academy series and the Darth Vader and Son and its sequels. No new Star Wars coming out this year, but there is another box set coming out with deluxe editions of Goodnight Darth Vader, and Friends. And mostly right now I've been working on my new series, which is Hallucinating Neanderthal. And so it's still a long time ago, but it's not far away. And I mean, pretty much any scene with Finn. I really loved Finn.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any books to hold up, but I do have a few things to share about Del Rey books that are coming out in the coming year. I just want to start with the novelization of The Force Awakens by Alan Dean Foster, which it was so amazing to have Alan back to do, starting off with the very first novelization of the first film and then coming and doing The Force Awakens was awesome. Did anybody get this book? Thank you all so much. When this hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, we all had like a minor freak out. So thank you to all of you. And if you haven't gotten it yet, you should, because there's stuff in there that isn't in the films, like how the heck did Poe get thrown out of his TIE fighter and then end up back at the Resistance base? You'll find that. Or that time Kylo was fighting with Rey and he looked at her and said, "It's you." So you should check this out. And then my next book, I happen to have an expert on this panel.
All right, so Bloodline, which is coming out May 3rd. Some of you who are aware of this book before know that it was originally intended for March, but then I asked if, seeing as how this book leads into The Force Awakens, if I could perhaps see The Force Awakens before finishing edits, and Del Rey, in their graciousness, was like, that does seem like a good idea. That said, let's see, it is, I can't tell you that much yet, but it is obviously a story of Princess Leia. It's set some years before The Force Awakens, and it very much is a story about her, not primarily as a wife or a mom, but sort of who she is in the New Republic and who she's tried to be. And I think the events of the book help you understand some of why she is where she is in The Force Awakens. And you do learn a little bit about the birth of the Resistance. I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything else. All right.
The
Yeah.
snipers have not come yet.
Yes.
Lucasfilm has people that would like rappel down into the room.
They come from above.
Watch the skies.
And then in July, we have the sequel to Aftermath coming out, which, as we left our team at the end of the last novel, Nora, Snap, Sinjir, Joss had kind of created an unlikely alliance to go become Nazi hunters, and by Nazi hunters, of course, I mean Imperial hunters, same difference. So this book finds them being a team, doing all that, and then suddenly getting interrupted by a request from Princess Leia when she discovers that Han and Chewie are in a bit of trouble. Han, before he decides to settle down, with Leia and become a respectable guy, he has one last debt to pay. And that's to Chewie, and that's to freak a sheep, like we saw in the interlude in book 1. So this book is about our two favorite BFFs, freeing Chewie's homeworld. It's beautiful. And then I think the next one is that I get to announce a book. Star Wars Catalyst is a prequel to Rogue One, and it's coming out in fall 16. That is literally all I can tell you. But it's available for pre-order if on that title alone you're excited about it, which I'm excited. And we'll have more updates about this in the coming months. But
There will probably be an author. We're not
there
sure.
will probably
That's really secret.
So that's all I have for the upcoming Del Rey books. And I know someone's excited to be here. It looks like we don't have mics, but I would love to throw to you guys for your questions for our panel of experts, because I think you'll ask much more interesting things than I would. So if you just want to come and stand in the aisle and shout, or...
Actually, I have a question for Claudia. Are we going to see the characters from Lost Stars again?
You will not see them in Bloodline. Well, I take that back. You see one person in Bloodline. And as for any potential sequel to Lost Stars, my fingers are crossed. Keep letting them know you would like that to happen. But there's nothing in the works yet. I hope that's yet. But yeah, there's Bloodline very much stands alone. It's not a sequel to Lost Stars, and I had one character carry over because I actually was working with the plot and realized, oh my gosh, I need somebody from X, and Lost Stars had that person, so that was convenient.
So I know some of you wrote sort of in the old EU pre-Disney acquisition and all that. So for those of you that have, how is writing in the kind of new lack of canon, or new, much smaller canon, how has that experience been different than writing in sort of the old EU with the very lengthy canon?
I guess that's me. I've done both, and of course, New Dawn is if anybody missed any of it, New Dawn is the first novel in sort of the Lucasfilm story group era of storytelling. The way that it used to be, one of the things that I collect, I'm a massive pack rat, one of the things that I collect is tie-in novels and comic books from days gone by. And tie-ins go all the way back to radio shows. I mean, The Lone Ranger and everything like that. There were Beverly Hillbillies novels. I mean, seriously, all these things were out there. But in all of that time, these novels were not considered really anything more than just additional licensed products, interchangeable with a t-shirt. They never had any bearing on what happened in the TV show, or what happened in the movie, or what happened in anything else. The first Happy Days novel, Richie Cunningham gets engaged, but you will never see the name of that character that he gets engaged to in the TV show, because nobody would even have ever thought of that. In the 80s, with Lucasfilm being really involved with the licensed materials and being much more active, that begins to change. And of course, with the 90s, with the EU, they're starting to really experiment with some new things, like we had Shadows of the Empire, which was tie-ins to a movie that didn't exist, except in the various tie-in things that we put together. And all of this really was, I think, building up to what they've done with the story group. The story group changes the game entirely for multimedia franchises, in that we're actually in at the ground floor. We have people who are in on the story group who know what's happening in the movies, know what's happening in the Rebels, know what's happening in the TV shows, know what's happening in the novels and the comics and everything else. And so not only are we able to prevent there from being mistakes or collisions or calamities, or something being given away in one story that interacts incorrectly or is overruled by another story, we're able to kind of deal with some of the things that we were never able to cope with before, like the fact that the production timelines for a show like Clone Wars or Rebels are so much further out than the timelines of a comic book or the timelines of a novel. But since, when I wrote New Dawn, they put me in touch with the story group. I got to see the story Bible for the first season of Rebels. I got to talk with Dave Filoni, who wrote the intro for this, and we had, I got story notes back from all three executive producers. I had all kinds of input, and I was given a number of things where it was, all right, here's some stuff that you can give away. Here's some stuff that will not be showing up in Rebels for a good 6-7 months, but you can actually tip some of these things off here and there. It's not ad hoc anymore. It's actually planned, and it makes it all the better for you guys, because it allows you to not just have to wait from movie to movie to movie to get your Star Wars fix of something that's going to be official and not be overruled. And you know that it's part of the whole thing. There's not a pecking order really, where there's the movie over here and then the novels and the comics don't count. It all counts from here on out. And we're able to do some wonderful things, I say, multimedia-wise. We had a character in this book, Ray Sloan, who we then we get to see her as an admiral in Aftermath. We got to see her make, I got to write her as a cadet in an issue of Star Wars Insider.
She was just in Kanan.
I was going to get to that. Yeah, she makes captain in Star Wars Rise of the Empire in the short story I added. And in the issue of Star Wars Kanan that just came out on Wednesday, we get to see her in a scene from New Dawn, and then we get to see her in the present day, so to speak, of that comic book. that's really a different thing. We're way past, where the EU really started. Its genesis was just the writers wanting to borrow things from each other. It was nothing even really official. It was the fact that Archie Goodwin was writing both the comic strip and the comic book at Marvel, and he had read the Brian Daley books. So he was, so that came about organically back then. Now we have really a model for something else, and I think it's exciting.
I changed my mind. Can I ask a question? Is that okay? I have a question for Adam. A couple of your books, like The Ultimate Star Wars and this is embarrassing. I'm completely blanking on the name of everything. Absolutely everything you need to know about Star Wars. Are written collaboratively with multiple authors, and I was wondering. I mean, those books are a huge undertaking. Can you talk about how you worked with those other authors?
Yeah, actually, for these books, it was really very easy because we talked to the editors and they just kind of divided it up according to what our strengths and our interests were. So for me, I tend to do a lot of stuff for Star Wars Rebels for DK, having written their 2 visual guides for the show. So I worked on a lot of the Star Wars Rebels stuff. Stuff from the original trilogy, whereas I think Daniel and Tricia worked on a lot of Clone Wars things in Ultimate Star Wars. And Michael Kogi in absolutely everything. He looks like he's about 16 or 17, but I think he's older than I am, and worked on recently on the Force Awakens young adult novelization. And so he's a real good authority on aspects of Star Wars that have been around for a while. But it's for me, I came into writing about Star Wars at about the time they were making the announcement on the EU becoming Legends and the new canon. So I haven't, unlike John, I haven't had to go through that transition. So I've been kind of fortunate to kind of grow up in this new era where everything is shepherded from the story group. So for us, it's pretty straightforward, and we're fortunate that everything is kind of canon and in line, and there aren't a lot of questions about what we get to do. So I've been fortunate in that way with these 2 books, and it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, this is a question for Mr. Miller. You've written in the EU a number of really fun characters. There's Carrick, a Yark, the Sandwoman.
Yeah.
Have you have a character whom, if you could, under the table, sneak into the new universe so that they're now canon? Who would be your choice for?
The trick with that is almost everything that I've written has been in the far distant past of the Star Wars universe. I mean, I was slowly getting a little closer, a little closer, a little closer with Knights of the Old Republic, 4,000 years, 1,000 years to 1,000 years before Knight Errant, and then finally we get to Kenobi and New Dawn, and we're creeping slowly towards Star Wars. So anybody that I name is going to be, you drag in all the characters from the past. I would love to see a Knights of the Old Republic Zane Carrick cartoon, an animated series. I think that would be the funnest thing ever. No idea if that would happen. Every time I hear Ewan McGregor talk about he wants to do a Star Wars movie, I'm like, I have a book. Yeah. It's right there. But no, probably my favorite character from all of those old stories has got to be the Griff. That's the little con artist. And I'll just tell a quick story. I'm actually doing 2 conventions this week. I'm running immediately after this, after the signing here. We're doing it at 6:30. I'm flying down to Memphis, my hometown show for Mid-South Con. The fans there kept threatening to dress me up as one of my characters, and I said, the only character I will ever let you dress me up as would be the Griff, but you'll have to actually have it life-size, the costume, and I'm just not going to be able to get into that because he's 3 feet tall. So I showed up at the convention the next year, and one of the puppet creators had made a life-size Muppet of the Griff. And so I ended up carrying him all around during the convention. And if you go to my Twitter, Twitter, which is JJM Faraway. You'll see you'll see Griff in the photo behind me. I had to carry him around for the convention, and we ended up doing a sort of a puppet show with him where I did a reading. And the thing was, I had to drive him back home, and so he was in the child seat in my back seat. And I remember I went through one drive-through restaurant, and the woman said, "That is the ugliest child I've ever seen in my life." And if you look at Griff, you'll know what they mean. But he'll say he's pretty. So.
Claudia, this is for you. I first want to say, out of all the books in the new canon, yours was the most surprising for me. I'm so glad I listened to the guys on Jedi Council and moved it up my reading list because it was amazing. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
My question is essentially, your book had probably the most new main characters out of all the new canon. So can you describe what your interactions were with the story group as far as letting you create these characters and their reactions to those characters as you went along through the process?
The idea from the very beginning was that it was going to be about original people, and that they would be the main characters, and the other characters would only come in when they were going to intersect. Basically, the two goals for Lost Stars, they wanted a big star-crossed romance, and they wanted sort of the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead version of Star Wars. Like, other people would have been at several of these events, and what did it look like to be there if you're not somebody who's on the main mission or making the big decision? What if you're just on the ground and you kind of don't know what's going on? How would that feel to you? So there was always a lot of support to create those people, and I got a lot of freedom to do that. I was really surprised, honestly, when they came to me. I thought, well, they're going to have some outline and they'll have all this. But all they said, we want this really idealistic young girl to join the rebellion, and we want this really sort of dark, broody guy to join the Empire. And I said, okay, but I want the idealistic girl to join the Empire, and I want the broody guy to join the rebellion. And they said, okay. So it was all very free from there. The things with the story group, the one I really remember was I had the Devastator somewhere in the story, and I got a note back, and they're like, it's not there. And it's like, it's an imaginary ship that exists in our heads. It could be there, and they're like, it's not there. And it just never, I'd always written original work up till then, so I never had anything in my imagination. Anybody come and go, that's wrong. But it was. But I mean, it wasn't that big a deal. We worked around it easily enough. But it was things like that, like making sure that the timing was right on certain things, that ships were where they needed to be. And then, I don't want to be overly spoilery for those who haven't read Lost Stars, but the ending is what ties into The Force Awakens. But originally, when I was writing the book, there was nothing about, oh, this is to lead into The Force Awakens. Like, there was nothing about it being part of that journey. And I had actually come up with another version of that scene, very close, slightly different, that had all these sort of elements happening in this big battle. And then the head editor sort of came by and said, guess what? They were like, this is so close to something that we deal with in the movie, you get to write it. So that was just a wonderful, happy coincidence. So with Story Group, it was much looser on Lost Stars.
Did you freak out when they fly through the Star Destroyer in The Force Awakens? Were you like,
oh yeah, it's like, I did that.
I actually have a question for Jeff real quick. You must be sitting up here saying like, ha! These suckers who have to write in continuity. I have cracked the Star Wars code. Can you talk a little bit about how you develop your books kind of in a very different way from everyone else up here?
Yeah, I mean, I was really, really fortunate. The editor I worked with on the Darth Vader series was J.W. Rinsler, and who actually has a background in visual arts and great sense of humor, and totally got that those books just exist in this weird space where they're not canon, but what are they? Like they're just, they rely on everything that's there, but they do something different. And with Jedi Academy, it was a little different, where One question I get from kids a lot is like why Darth Vader isn't in Jedi Academy, or why not using the other characters. And Jedi Academy, the idea was actually it's set 200 years before the Clone Wars. And the reasoning there was so that it could just operate in this weird space where it doesn't conflict with anything, because there's like absolutely nothing to conflict with, and it's such a small little space, like just this one little school. And but again, I get to skirt the rules with Yoda a bit. I don't know how much my version of Yoda in Jedi Academy really fits with, who he is in the movies or Clone Wars or anything. So
He's a younger Yoda. People change.
yeah, he's a Yoda. That's a good point, especially over his
Dog years.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, the important thing was always just to have it come across what I love about Star Wars, which is just the humor and fun of it, and that's aside from all the cool looking stuff and the characters. For me, Star Wars was just a funny movie, and it was fun. And so I think, the only times that I ran into having to change something was in Jedi Academy 3, I had a Z95 Headhunter, and they were like, yeah, why don't you do a different ship, because
That doesn't exist yet.
we're not having Z95s here. And but so I don't know. I think the editors and everybody were kind of all on the same page, and they got it, and so I just ended up having a lot of freedom.
This is, I guess, a little less serious question. One thing I was thinking about when I read the book is how do you cope with the needs of people and places? Because sometimes it seems like Scrabble boards right next to you. You just grab like any four tiles.
I try to have everything spell like it sounds, because otherwise you'll lose your mind. I've written some crazy names, and I've realized you've got to do it the right way. There was actually a discussion Pablo Hidalgo, who's one of the story group people, had on Twitter earlier in the week, who put the first apostrophe in a Star Wars character's name. He's here. Go say hello to Chris Claremont, who has several apostrophe named characters in a Star Wars annual from Marvel in 1979. And honestly, you really do want to try to have things. One thing I do is, and it's not just Star Wars, but any book, I actually keep a grid. I try to have as few people with the same first initial as possible, which is really, really hard when you're writing Klingons. Kor, Krug, Koloth, Kang. We're kind of there.
You throw in a mode.
Yeah, every so often.
For me, at first, I was like, oh, this will be really fun. I can work in a couple of my friends. I'll rework their names so that they look Star Warsy. And I thought, I'm doing them a big favor. And then when I realized how many people and how many planets I had to come up with, it was like every human being I have ever known exists in Lost Stars in some way. Like one friend, his initials are JJH, and he's a junior, which is why there's a JJH2 droid in there, etc. And with Bloodline, I was already out of friends. That's everybody I know. So I'm actually going to do a prize, I think, on my Twitter or Tumblr. The person who finds every single Mad Max Fury Road reference in Bloodline is going to get a prize. There are many of them. So many.
Just to quickly follow up on that, when I did my first Star Wars comic, or I think it was the second issue, I put in a lot of my friends' names in a list of criminals. And then they all had pages on Wikipedia the next day, and I realized I can't do this anymore. You're all now trademarked by Lucasfilm, and you went to Disney in the sale. So yeah, don't do that.
The one thing I did, one of my very best friends in the world is named Rodney, and if you spell Rodney backwards, it's Yendor. which is why with that character in Lost Stars. But I told him, like, I got you a cameo. I didn't let him know that this is a pretty big character in the book. And so then I got all the texts that day, like, oh my God, you didn't kill me off. I was like, why did you think I was gonna do that? But yeah, you just borrow from where you can. And then, yeah, he too had a Wikipedia entry, which he was very happy.
I've been fortunate, particularly in the two Rebels guides that I've written. That, I have opportunities to name a lot of technology, come up with company names and names of droids and blasters and things. So when I do it, I always try to make sure it's either I'm fitting a pattern that's come before and following a convention, or coming up with something clever, coming up with a callback to something, making some, a droid name, a hidden acronym or a reference to something. And I've also realized too that I don't want to make anything up just for the sake of making something up. So if it's not clever, then I'll try. Okay, well, let's not even come up with a name for something here. Let's let somebody else do it later. So that maybe if they get a good idea, they can have an opportunity to fill it in later.
Yeah, I mean, I actually in Jedi Academy worked I'm a Red Wings hockey fan, being a Michigan native, so there's a character, Pasha, it's the nickname of Kabaldatsu. And RW22 is for Dino Cicerelli, who was one of my favorite players when he was playing for the Red Wings. But yeah, then some of them it's just, coming up with something that just feels right. Like, so there's Krona, who's this kind of bully, and I just was trying out different combinations of sounds until like something that sound phonetically like this sounds like this guy. Yeah, and then TP30 is just like, that's just a joke.
One final thing, speaking of that franchise that's having its 50th anniversary this year, managed to name one planet after a captain in the first book, and there's one planet after a captain in the second book. How long can I keep it going?
Lando and Ben.
Very good. Very good.
My question, just a very simple question. Jeffrey came with something, he was talking about how he likes the people of Star Wars, but I want to know, what are your favorite aspects of Star Wars? What gets you, what got you into it, and what's kept you into it?
Well, I mean, the humor, one of the things I like the most about Star Trek 7 is Star Trek. I will unleash my disruptors on you.
Just come down.
I have to say, I was doing